it's Mami CrayCray. I recorded a whole video before this, doing my makeup while I did it, talking about the whole George Floyd protest and Ahmaud Arbery and going into all that. And I just kind of erased it all because I was just like, it was just nonsensical. But hey guys, it's Mami CrayCray. I'm doing a makeup chit chat where I got to get my makeup done because I have to film some gaming videos with the girls. And if you don't know who my girls are, they're Nye and Ellie. And so let me just give you a synopsis of kind of the things that have been going on with us. I woke up today and I had so many text messages. I had an email from YouTube, an executive at YouTube named Malik Ducard, and part of an organization that's in YouTube called YouTube Black, reaching out. I've had somebody that I deal with sponsors reaching out. It kind of like, I just said, you know what, this is really being serious. I really need to maybe talk about this because I feel like I have a very unique perspective. What is that unique perspective? So if you don't know, my daughters were, I keep seeing this, now someone can probably prove me wrong and maybe there was someone else, I don't recall, but my daughters were the first black girls on YouTube, kid YouTubers. And they started when they were 3 and 5 years old. And in fact, Naya had just turned 5. And it was in 2016. And wow, it was the Wild West of YouTube. Back then it was crazy. But I feel as though we're also now, my daughters and I are the only mother-daughter gaming team that I know of. And to have a mom and daughters, and my daughters their age being black, we're the only ones that I know of that do gaming consistently, like on YouTube, that I know of. There may be older people who do gaming, but I don't know in this age of influence and being a mom and all that stuff. So, of course, I could be wrong, but that's just what my perspective is and what I've seen. So, when I first started YouTube, and our channel, we barely got views, and like the same old story for anybody who goes viral. Within 3 months, our videos went from me having 100 views to over 80 million views a month, to then 100 million views a month, and so on and so forth. It grew. And we've had ups and downs. We've had it go down as low as 10 million views a month. We've had it go 20, we have multiple channels that do, have multiple numbers on it. So I finally feel like we're in a stable place of where we want to be as far as YouTube. And if it goes up, it goes up. If it goes down, it goes down. But we have other things going on that we, for us, it's all about holistically being happy with our lives and, and being satisfied. Because if you're in the YouTube kind of train, it's easy to get snatched up into trying to have the highest numbers and, how much is ever enough. So, but I say all this to say, when we took off, we got amazing comments from people when comments were allowed, saying, these are amazing videos, I really love your girls, blah, 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 just wonderful things that we to this day, people tell us. But I also got something interesting that came my way that I don't think any other white family had to experience. And that is racial slurs that my daughters were called. And in particular, the first one that they were called, and I remember this, was they were called porch monkeys. And if you don't know what porch monkeys means, if you're not familiar, it's a derogatory term of black people. In the South, it was a derogatory term of black people sitting on the porch, like in the South, like they like to hang out, braid hair. When they talk about black people eating watermelon and chicken, you're having a picnic on the porch, that's what you're doing. Called porch monkeys, and it's a derogatory term. That's why if you call a black person a monkey, you're gonna get a reaction, okay? Even if it's very light, even if you don't mean it in that way, it's just, something to be aware of. So anyway, now let me just say this. Being a lighter skinned black person, I'm not biracial, I'm not mixed, I'm not from anywhere, I am from the US, I am a black American. But I'm light skinned. And right now I have a tan. Like growing up, I was very light. I had what's called good hair. I had light skin privilege. I never had to deal with being called a porch monkey or some of the things that darker people in my community have to deal with. I also came from a more educated background. I went to private school my whole life. Not that I was rich or anything, but and I came from a place, Prince George's County, Maryland. If you don't know what Prince George's County, Maryland is, look it up. It is an enclave of black people who, mostly middle class, but there's some very upper class black people in that part of town. And DC is called Chocolate City. So that DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, growing up, I was around a lot of black people, and I didn't have the same experience that some other people may have who grew up in different parts of the country. So I never been called a porch monkey. I never had an ounce on someone hit me with a derogatory term like that. And they're saying it about my kids. They're saying it to me like that. Let's just get that. You say something to my kids, you're talking to me, and I don't play that. So I quickly learned how to put a filter on my channel. But one of the things that really was disturbing about it is that I never talked about it. I never shared it really with a bunch of people because I always thought, this isn't something that you want to share. But I remember when YouTube changed the algorithm, and we would go through these algorithm changes in the kids' space, and we'll get these ups and downs and all these different types of things. And I remember they would just talk about how unfair it was, and it's not fair that YouTube did this. How could they do this to us? And I would talk to some of my other black families that I know, and we were just like, this is not against anybody else's family. This is just to give you a perspective of how we think. I've faced multiple racial things that come against us. I've seen white families do the exact same thing we do on YouTube, and their channel gets the views, and we just kind of just don't get any views. Like we've seen, and I'm not complaining because my channels have done great. So this is not like, and there's white families who've been going at it for years who had not had the success that I've had on here. So this is not that. But in particular, it was very difficult to hear them talk about how this is unfair. How could this happen to us? Why do we have to change? Why do we need to do something different? And I remember the black families, we would just kind of roll with the punches. And we didn't like it, and we would be irritated with it, but we were just saying, you know what? That's how it is. And I realized there is a huge disparity in how black people are so used to having to adjust. We're used to having to change up things. We're used to being told something that we were told we could do before, now we're told we can't. We're used to having to work harder or fight harder for the exact same thing that other families are. I remember we would talk about this this is like an everyday, things they're complaining about. We're just like, okay, just change what you're doing. And it would just be this thing why do I have to change my channel? Because YouTube wants me to. Why do I have to change things? I don't get it. It's not fair that I have to change. And I'm just like, really? I don't know. It was just very difficult to even be in these groups or listen to people talk like this or deal with it, because I was just like, girl, if you knew the things I had to deal with. Are you trying to quietly creep down the steps?
No, I was just going to say I overheard what my wife was saying, and the other day I was having a call with one of my buddies who lives in New York, and I decided to go for a little walk just to get some fresh air, and I walked down from my house down into the path, down into the dog park area, and I was in a somewhat isolated area by myself sitting on a bench, just kind of minding my business. This was probably the second or third day into the George Floyd protesting and riots, and as I was sitting there, there was a white woman who was riding her bicycle, and she decided to ride down the path towards me. So just to give you an idea of the picture, I'm off the main street probably 200 yards in somewhat of an isolated area, and it's kind of like a circular drive, and this white woman was riding her bicycle down the path coming towards me. And instinctively, as I was talking to my buddy, my first reaction, without even giving it a second thought was to start waving and smiling and making body language to make her feel comfortable and not
With his presence.
with my presence, even though I was there first, even though it wasn't technically a bike riding area. It's a dog park, and I was just minding my business, but I knew instinctively just to make her feel comfortable. And I even said to my buddy, God forbid if she were to turn around and go back up that hill and call the police and accuse me of something, it would be a he said, she said situation. And this is right on the heels of that woman in Central Park and the bird watcher accusing that man. And I said, this is so crazy. I said, this could turn into a he said, she said. They could come down there and start confronting me. And I'm saying, well, officer, I'm just sitting here having a conversation, minding my business. And I was making gestures to make her feel comfortable. Then it can escalate, and I'm over there by myself with no one to watch, no camcorder, no video, no one watching. And how this thing could escalate. And before you know it, I could be George Floyd. So these are the things that we go through, but for me,
that a white man wouldn't have to
wouldn't
think
even
of.
think about.
Now, a man may think of, like, will a woman think I'm thinking like this, but it's not this racial component to it.
Right.
That we always have to.
It's like,
we don't think about race. Like, when we go places, we don't think I'm black and they're white. Like, it doesn't even cross my mind. But it's like, there's certain incidents or things that will happen, and I just always say, would that have happened if I was white?
and it's the conditioning. I mean, think
We
about
have to
it.
think of it where white people don't even, they can just exist and never think about the color of their skin. It's always
Yeah.
a backbone. I have to teach my black daughters how to have pride in their hair because they have kinky hair, they have nappy hair, and I have to teach them, you can't, your hair isn't the same as white people, and white people don't even have to think of like, you don't even have to. It's not even in your existence. Like, even, like.
Well, let me share a story.
Okay.
Like, and not to be overly generalistic or stereotypical, but from one of the biggest memories I had as a child, and this goes back 40 years ago. If I've heard this once from my dad, I've heard it 1,000 times, and I'm not exaggerating. He says, if you ever get pulled over by the police or law enforcement, he says, do not be confrontational. And from a child, I'm a pretty conservative driver, but the few times that I've been pulled over, instinctively, my hands go to 10-2. Instinctively, like.
When you were in New York, you're living in New York. Just to give you an idea, he went to Brown University. He played basketball there.
I lived on Central
Park
Park West.
And we still do. And then he worked on Wall Street. And tell me what happened to you in New York.
Well, first of all, I lived in one of the prime real estate areas. I could not get a taxi in front of my apartment unless I was in a suit heading for work.
Remember what happened to your brother in the building?
Yeah, my brother.
Him and his brother both lived in the same building, owned apartments on Central Park
Yes.
West next to Lincoln Center. If you don't know about New York,
That's
look it up.
across from Tavern on the Green.
It's no joke.
Yeah,
Okay.
like-
Right. We can see Tavern on the
Yeah.
Green, like it's right
It's
there.
across the street.
You can see the Macy's Day Parade, like it's right there.
And my brother was an accomplished actor, and he had been in the
dancer on
building. I mean, between
Broadway.
the two of us, we've been in the building 50 years.
Yeah.
And one time my brother got in the elevator, and this white woman looked at him, and she said, excuse me, the service elevator's around the corner. And he said, I know, I own an apartment on the 20th floor, and I've been living here for 10 years. This is what she said to
Yeah.
him.
And then she's just like, oh.
I was, oh, well, then you know what a nice building it is. And going back to, I had been with I worked on Wall Street. I had been with my white colleagues that go to like a Knicks game or something, and we will put our customers in a car to go home. And this has happened on several occasions. I've been with my white colleagues, and taxis would not pick me up outside of Madison Square Garden. I had to have, my white colleagues were in shock. They would go and hail a taxi down so that I could then come back into the picture, get in the back seat, and go home. And we've even had encounters where they stopped for my white colleague, and when they saw that I was also going to be joining the party, they're like, well, wait, where are you going? Oh, that's another one. Where are you going? They stop, and before they unlock, they lock the door before you can get in. Where are you going? So they determine the destination if they want to take you there, not us. So There are so many stories,
Well,
but
they thought, yeah. I mean,
there are so many stories.
He was
but,
thought to be a suspect.
oh yeah, oh my gosh.
That's the one I was trying to tell you.
Oh
to
my gosh.
say.
I was at a
that-
card store. I forgot about this. I was at a card store on Columbus Avenue in brown khakis and a white sweatshirt getting a card. And all of a sudden, a police officer walked in the store and goes like this to me. And I was shocked because my wife will tell you I'm a very compliant, middle of the fairway. Like, it's going to be hard to bust me for anything because I'm always trying to follow the laws. And he had me come outside, and I'm on Columbus Avenue outside the card store being asked a bunch of questions. And all of a sudden, he goes, "This is why I'm detaining you." And he turns on his walkie-talkie. And I guess there had been some sort of incident in Central Park, which is about 20 blocks away. And he wanted to make sure that I wasn't the perpetrator of it.
And he was basically going to get arrested.
I'm sitting there detained. One of my neighbors walked by.
Damn, how embarrassing.
Yeah, and said, "No, he's a good guy, officer. He's a good guy." And I'm sitting there being detained now. And they they made me provide my my license. So anyway, there are so many stories, but for me, particularly with everything going on, each of them has their own meaning and tells a subtle message. But for me, just with this George Floyd, the fact that my mind immediately went, as I was there first, minding my own business in a dog park, not a bicycle trail, that as soon as she started heading my direction, use every type of body language gesture to make her feel
Yeah, because
at
it just
ease.
happened with, was it Cooper? I think both of them had the same last name
Yeah.
at the Central Park.
Yeah, 2 or 3 days after.
And let me just say this. Some of our strongest allies in life are white people.
Absolutely.
And people of other races. So this is nothing against, I mean, quite frankly, change wouldn't come without white people
Yeah.
stepping in and doing things and helping.
On our behalf.
But this is just to make people aware of, like, that we're educated, I would say upper middle class, if, or in an income bracket that's considered pretty high, and we still face those things.
Absolutely.
And think about how much worse it is in the trickle-down effect for people in the inner city, people in ghettos and things like that. And one thing I want to keep in mind is because I feel like people who will look at, black people who are, we have a lot of children without fathers. We have a lot of crime against one another. We have all these things happening. And you may say, well, black people are always doing something. Like, if that's your mindset, let me just... And it's just like, well, slavery was, however, the slaves are freed, like black people are free. Why can't they do as good as some other groups that come here or do things? Well, what you don't realize is that just because you are freed physically, it does not erase generations of mental slavery. And quite frankly, when we were freed, we were still dealing with segregation and discrimination. I mean, like, we still were never equal or free. And that just doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away.
Because a law came in. It doesn't just go away without doing specific things to help a community rebuild their family infrastructures. Yeah. And to renew their mind into, thinking a certain way.
Yeah.
So what keeps getting passed along are things that of, street crime and violence and things like these things, having a bunch of children with no fathers around. All those things happen because it's not in the DNA, but it's deeply entrenched. Yes. Because there's no pride in us. We don't have a history of pride. I want you to think about it. Even groups that come here, whether they're Asian or any other group that comes here from another country, they still can look back on, the great times of the kingdoms of their country, or the great accomplishments. They come from something other than slavery. The genesis, the beginning of black people here is slavery. We don't have a great thing that we can look back on and how great we used to be. We come from slavery. You say, well, you came from Africa, and maybe you can have pride in Africa, and all these things like that. As Black Americans who have come, as Black Americans, okay, we are Black Americans. We're not Africans.
Yeah.
We can't look back at a time, and quite frankly, if we look at Africa, I mean, it's been pillaged and stripped of so much stuff from other white nations. Like, there's no, like when they talk about, even when they say make America great again, it's just like, for us, it's just like, we've never had a great. It doesn't mean there aren't good things here, and there aren't Black people who have invented things and done more wonderful things. Like, it's not saying that those things don't exist, but we don't have, we can't look at our forefathers, we can't, you know, when you come from something like that, I want you to think about it.
Yeah, it's tough.
The mental attitude or bondage that is passed on, we don't have a pride that we can pass on, you know. And so that's why you'll see the Black community just kind of like, there's some negative things that happen within the Black community against one another, and all the things I mentioned, and you got to see it from that perspective, like,
you know, and also that, besides the point that my wife made is so powerful, but then even after you overcome that, let's talk about, I was just thinking about in sports, there were no Black quarterbacks for years because they weren't thought of to be smart enough. When I worked on Wall Street, here you are, you could be in a training class with your white colleagues, and you could go through the same curriculum, but when it came time for them, this is on Wall Street, you know, when it came time to get placement for a specific job, the Black people weren't considered for the trading jobs because those were considered more quantitative or mathematical or engineering in background. So they wouldn't even, those departments wouldn't even look at the Black trainees for potential spots in there. We were always shuttled towards qualitative things, or even in the finance, instead of it being corporate finance, where it's a more quantitative background in analyzing other projects, Black people funneled into public finance because they could use their Black face as a token to get funds from governments and things like that. So even when you work your behind off and you've reached a position where now you hope it's a level playing field, there are biases in the people in the departments that you aspire to be in, and stereotypes. And they try to channel you towards the lesser challenging academic career paths, and the more lucrative, challenging career paths, they try to steer you away without directly saying it.
And so, and these are the things, even like when we talk about with sponsorships with YouTube, you know, what he's talking about with that, but this in practical things today, there's sponsorships with YouTube. We hear from so many Black YouTubers, they get far less money for the, and they may have more views than a white counterpart in the kids thing. And I'm gonna bring this up because, and we've waited about 2 years before I brought this up. I created a toy a few years ago, and called the Anicorns. They're animals mixed with unicorns. And to give you an idea, the company, there was another company, there was a toy sponsor who hired us for a commercial to do a toy. Oh my God. And we didn't have any information about the toy because a lot of times these things are kind of disorganized and things like that. And we fly to California and do this commercial, and we find out the toy is a direct, let me just tell you, I'm not going to say what it is, but you figure it out on your own. We have something called anicorns. They're little stuffed animals with a unicorn horn, okay? They changed their name of theirs a little bit different, and because they're a big manufacturer, they could do all these fancy things with it. But even some of the same names of the animals they used that were mine. Oh, those are my tiles I gotta fix. Some of those same things that they used my exact things. And not only that, they wanted us to be in the commercial for it. And the day of, we're finding out about this, and then I'm supposed to sign away my rights to that toy. And
on the spot.
And then the people, they were so angry at us that we wouldn't sign away our rights. And I'm thinking,
of a toy she created first.
I created first, and that they then copied And then they hired us to do the commercial, and then we're just like, did they hire us so they can take a, like, you know, it was just very.
And the mentality is like, well, just be happy we're giving you the commercial, not that the product itself was so.
Exactly, that it was taken from us. And then all that, because we're black, we're thinking, okay, well, how should we conduct ourselves? Because now we're black. Are we looking like we're outrageous because we're black people here and we're causing a stink? And to give you an idea, what they ended up doing, or what ended up happening, is we had hired a lawyer to do arbitration, things like that. They wouldn't respond to us. And they ended up going with the white kids that they also hired. And now they designed a toy line for them and all this other stuff, and never work with us again, which we didn't want to because of that. But they never responded to it. And they still to the day sell this toy. And because I'm just a small black mom who, with 2 black daughters, we created something, they've stolen it from us and have and can care less that they did it. They just ignore us now, and now they focus on the white family that they had also hired for that. And that white family now gets all types of deals from them, and they're on their packaging for it and everything, and we were there as well.
Yeah.
But they decided, you know, so how do I fight that as one, a woman, and 2, a mom, and now my 2 black daughters are seeing, like, it doesn't matter if you create something.
Right.
They can just ignore you.
And the message is just like, we're
If they-
going
they
to
could
give you
just
this one.
stonewall
We're
you
going to
and
give you this
ignore you.
one commercial. Be happy with it. Go away. When my wife is the creator of the entire product line, and it's like, well, why isn't that satisfactory for you?
So, you know, if you go to Walmart or you go to any toy thing, you'll see that this company, they're little stuffed animals with the unicorn horn. And I just thought, if I was a white influencer, a bigger family, white family, would they have just done that and just ignored me after the fact? And then take the white family and use that to promote their toy and push them into the stores and everything like that. They haven't done that with us. They didn't try to make amends with us, where a great opportunity could have been, you know what, we're sorry we didn't realize this. Could we partner with you? We didn't know, or anything like that. No, they didn't want to do that. They would rather just throw the black family to the side because we don't matter anyway, and we just needed them for quota, and let's just make this white family, these white girls, the white kids, and nothing against them, like, oh my goodness, please, nothing against them, but I'm just saying that is what happens to us all, that happens, okay? And we're supposed to just accept it and move on. So anyway, you know, this was just kind of like my way of just talking about this. Again, I realize for me, I have light skin privilege. That's a whole nother can of worms to open up, you know, in terms of things. So again, you know, I don't still have the experience that my darker family members have had to go through. My daughters are darker than me. They're going to have experiences that I don't have because of light skin privilege. You know, there's a whole cycle of this stuff that needs to be discussed. But let me just say, you know, this isn't against anybody. You know, for the most part, all the sponsors we've dealt with, a lot of the people are just wonderful people. They've been really good. They've been really great toy companies to work with. I mean, like, in particular, I'll say, like, Mattel has been great. I've done some things with Hasbro that's been great. And in fact, Mattel in particular seems to want to push diversity. So I really love working with them, and a lot of other small companies that have, you know, I think is it Jaxware, I think it is, Jazzware, I think it is. I'm sorry, I can't. And Jax Pacific, and there's a couple other companies, but there's one company in particular I was devastated by that. And to this day, you know, every time I go to Walmart or Target or anywhere, I see that they got their toy in there that they stole from me, and that they've put the white family on the front of it to dismiss me. So anyway, that's it for this video. I just wanted to just kind of this is kind of like a stream of thought. My goal is on this channel is to start, you know, empowering women or people in general, whether you're black or white, you know, showing you. I've been calling myself millionaire mom, only because there's a guy, Graham Stephan, who talked about he's the millionaire millennial. So I thought it'd be fun to just see my perspective on some of the things that are out there, and about money and dealing with it, you know, how to grow a business or grow your wealth as a family, from a middle-aged kind of perspective and from a woman's perspective, because I feel like there's not a lot of women on YouTube that specifically are talking, or that are millionaires and talking about money and you know, how to grow it and how to work like a 4-hour work week, you know, just like, you know, the very famous book says, of working a 4-hour work week and building income and building wealth for yourself and for your future. So anyway, this is a big impromptu. I know this is a mess, but make sure you subscribe and check out my other videos. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.